So as we've gotten further and further into Legion Remix, a lot of players, including more casual players, have started to gear out their mains and start to look into leveling up alts, and have also started to cap out or come close to capping out their bonus experience. So in this video, I want to go over what I think is the fastest and easiest way to level up new characters, with the primary goal of getting these characters to max level and not necessarily using these characters in Legion Remix. Because remember, you can transfer these characters to retail whenever you want, or just wait until the end of the event and those characters will be brought to retail, given retail gear, and you can just play them on retail like normal alts. So there's a lot of reasons outside of all the things you get in Remix to actually level up a bunch of characters to max level. And in this method, if you do it efficiently, you'll be able to get characters to max level up to level 80 in about an hour. If you're a little bit less efficient, it'll probably be more like an hour and a half. Now that time is based on having the cap of 400% increased experience. If you're not at that cap, this farm will not only still be good, it'll just obviously take longer, but this farm will also allow you to get new characters up to level 80 very quickly, even without the full 400% increased experience. And you'll be getting that 10% increase to your experience with every new level 80. So there's a bunch of reasons to do this farm specifically, and this farm is actually still a glitch in how it actually works. And the really big reason to use this method over other leveling methods is that it is completely solo. You rely on no other players. You don't rely on queuing up for dungeons or doing raids or anything like that. It's completely solo. You can do it whenever you want, and you can do it half AFK, because basically all you're doing in this farm is just tagging a bunch of enemies that NPCs will primarily be killing. So you're going to create your new time runner, log in, set up all of your bars, then you're going to skip the first two quests. So you're going to skip the starting scenario quest. Make sure you're in the spec you want to be in, and no matter what class you're playing, be in the best spec for ranged tagging of enemies. A lot of different classes in the game will be able to do this pretty easily, but let's say you're playing something like a warrior, I would recommend going to Prot, because Prot has heroic throw on no cooldown, because all you need to do is tag enemies with any amount of damage, and that's all you're going to be doing. So choose whatever spec is the easiest to do that. A lot of healer specs are also really good for this, because you can heal yourself up if you're taking damage. But you're going to skip the starting scenario, then you're going to skip the sky riding quest over to the right, then a portal will pop up, take that to the Infinite Bazaar. Once you get there, go over to the left to pick up your free piece of jewelry. Then you're going to go talk to Eternus, and he's going to have an option to show you what happened to Dalaran essentially, and this is going to allow you to start the starting scenario or the introduction quest to Original Legion, and this will take you back to your main city. You're going to do a handful of quests. This will put you into the starting scenario for Legion, which you don't normally have to do for Legion Remix. You're going to go through that whole starting scenario, which is actually going to be a decent chunk of your leveling time. If you want to make this faster, do this at more peak times for whatever region you're in, because while it'll put you in the scenario solo, it will also try to put other players in the scenario with you, and the more players means this is just going to be sped up and it won't take as long. I did this completely solo, and it could take you like 15 minutes doing that. So that can actually save you a bunch of time if you want to do this much more efficiently. But then after you've completed that introduction scenario, it's going to take you back to your main city. You're going to do a handful of additional quests. Then it's going to take you to the portal room. You're going to talk to a mage, and it's going to take you to Dalaran. But this is not the normal Dalaran in Legion Remix. This is going to be a Dalaran that's hovering above Karazhan, and is going to be a different instance of Dalaran. And in this Dalaran, there's going to be demons constantly falling from the sky and spawning in everywhere. And once you've gotten to this part, you are now at the farm portion of this method, because all you're going to do past this point is run around tagging all of the demons that are spawning, and all of the NPC mages and guards in the city will be aggroing to these demons, killing them, and you'll get a ridiculous amount of experience. But before you run around and start farming these demons, there's one additional thing you have to do, which is what is the actual glitch of this method. So you're going to either Hearthstone back or take one of the cards, do whatever you need to do to go back to the Infinite Bazaar to turn on Heroic World Tier. Then once you're done with that, you're going to go back. Now, if you don't have the card that will allow you to just teleport back to the location you were at, you're going to go back to your main city and talk to the mage that sent you to this Dalaran instance originally. They will have an option to send you back there. So once you get back to this different instance of Dalaran, you're just going to run around tagging all the demons. Now the glitch is that when you activate Heroic World Tier, you will get the increased experience that you would normally get from having Heroic World Tier active, but none of the enemies in this version of Dalaran get any increased health or increased damage or empowered buffs from Heroic World Tier. So they don't get any of the benefits from Heroic World Tier, but you get the massive increase in experience. And Heroic World Tier itself gives you 500% increased experience from just killing anything with it on. So that'll give you a ridiculous amount of increased experience. And then whatever bonus experience you have from your artifact weapon will just add on top of that to give you a ridiculous amount of experience. And like I mentioned, you can pretty easily get to level 80 doing this method in an hour and a half if you're more efficient with it, especially if you can save a lot of time in the scenario. You can get this done in an hour or even a bit less than an hour. A big determining factor is also going to be if there's a lot of other people in your instance of this Karazhan or on that server, because no matter what happens, if multiple people, or at least multiple people not in the same group, are tagging the same enemies, it will give you a bit less experience. So the best possible scenario is you go on prime time to do the scenario that takes you to the Dalaran instance, and then farm this at off hours, so there's a lot less or no people here farming this as well, because there will usually be at least one or two other people here farming these enemies to level up as well. Now, a couple things to look out for. First off, every little bit, go put in your talent points. Look for ways to move around quicker, to be more tanky, and to more easily tag enemies. Your actual damage doesn't really matter. The second thing is your first 60 minutes after starting the quest chain that ends up taking you here is going to be pretty important, because within that quest chain, right before you get into the starting scenario, you will actually run around and pick up these different buffs. And one of these buffs is called Holy Enchantment, and it has a chance on hit to deal additional holy damage. Now you notice once you first get here to Dalaran, anytime this procs, it'll pretty much instantly kill any non-elite enemy you're hitting. Even when you're higher levels, this will do like half or more than half of a lot of these enemies' health, at least the non-elite enemies. So that first 60 minutes is actually really strong, because you can just kill enemies really quickly anytime you get this proc. So using that buff efficiently will actually be pretty important in reducing the time this method takes to get to max level. Also, when you're running around tagging these enemies, you want to tag enemies when they're high health if you can, as often as possible, because all of the NPCs and mages around that are actually killing these enemies will be attacking them even if you don't attack them first. And if they're lower health, you'll get less experience. And also, there are big elites that can spawn in. More specifically, the main ones you're looking out for are the big like fell elemental demons that drop out of the sky, because the elites will give you a lot more experience. But realistically, this just boils down to running around and tagging everything as quickly as possible to get as much experience as possible, and also keeping yourself alive. You will start to die later on, because one of the biggest downsides of this method is you are not getting any gear or any infinite power. This is one of the reasons that this farm is better to do on characters you're not going to really be playing, or characters you just want to send over to retail to start that character into normal retail gameplay and gearing. So you're going to become very weak as you continue to level up, especially when you get to level 70 and above. And that brings me to another thing you have to look out for in this farm, because once you get to level 71, you're going to have to do one of a handful of possible things, because at level 71, for whatever reason, the scaling or experience gains here gets really wonky, and you'll start getting almost no experience. And this seems to be a bit buggy in how this works, because some of the characters I've leveled up here, once I get level 71, I just hearth out and go back to the other Dalaran or go to the Infinite Bazaar, and then I'll go back and teleport back to this instance of Dalaran, and the experience gains will be fixed. Sometimes that actually doesn't work. And after leveling a bunch of characters here, the one foolproof thing I could find is that getting up to level 72 always fixes this issue no matter what. Sometimes hearthing out and coming back fixes it, sometimes it doesn't, but getting to level 72 always fixes this issue. And one of the easiest and fastest methods I have found is that once you get to 71 is to just go do a normal or heroic dungeon, because the experience you get for your first one of those every day will pretty much always give you a level, so that'll instantly get you up to 72, and that's also really efficient in terms of experience anyway. And then once you're done with that dungeon, you just come back and the experience will be fixed, and then you can just get up to 80 after that point and continue tagging enemies like you were doing previously. And that's legitimately all you're going to be doing. And like I mentioned, with the 400% increased experience, so max out experience on your artifact weapon, if you do this efficiently, you can definitely get this down to getting to level 80 in under an hour. If you're not being super efficient, you're watching Netflix, the scenario takes longer than you would like to get here, it'll more on average take you like an hour and a half, which isn't super crazy because again, you can do this farm half AFK. All you're really going to be doing is tagging enemies, running around and trying not to die, because sometimes they will turn and try to hit you as well. So especially once you get higher levels, you can definitely start to die. But when you die, it keeps you in Dalaran, so you just run over to your body and keep tagging enemies. Dying doesn't lose you a ton of time either. But what's also really nice about this farm is that even if you don't have a bunch of experience on your artifact weapon or you're not capped out, this is an incredibly efficient experience farm to do no matter what. And it doesn't require you're on a spec or a class or have a good amount of gear or anything like that. That is just going to be much stronger in the leveling phase of Legion Remix. So the speed of this farm isn't determined by how good you are at playing that spec or how strong that spec is. So it's really efficient no matter what you're playing, which allows you to just very easily get that 10% increased experience every time you get another character up to level 80, which is also just another really good way to get up to that 400% increased experience. And that is definitely something I've used this farm here myself to help me get up to the 400% increased experience cap, because this method is just so easy, can be done half AFK, doesn't require any skill, doesn't require playing a good class to be faster or slower. So I think this is easily the most efficient and consistent way to solo farm a new character up to level 80. And on a side note, if you end up wanting to go back and playing one of the characters that you leveled up through this method, you get on them and see you have like no gear and no power, what I would recommend doing is just go turn off Heroic World Tier and do quests. Just questing in the open world without Heroic World Tier on is very easy, even if you don't have a lot of gear. And once you hit level 80, opening up any of those boxes will very quickly get you all 584 gear. And then after that point, opening all those boxes will still be giving you the motes to turn into higher item level gear. And actually saving all of your quests until you're level 80 is a really good way to very quickly gear up characters, because every one of those boxes you get from every quest will give you at least one mote. So that's actually a really good way to specifically gear up new level 80 characters. So you can do that as well once you get to level 80. If you still want to play these characters, you're just going to be very weak until you get at least a handful of quests done. But that's the entirety of this farm. This is still a glitch farm. I'm surprised it's still here. I previously did a video on this, but I did want to revisit this and see how good it would be once you have the 400% increased experience. And since it's still here, you might as well use it. It is ridiculously strong. It's especially ridiculously strong if you don't care about playing those other characters you're leveling up here in Legion Remix, especially if you just want to get new characters up to level 80 and send them over to retail and start playing them there. This is by far the best solo method for that as well. But that's all I want to go over, so thanks for watching.